Hello, everyone. Welcome. We're going to give it a couple of minutes for people to join. In the meantime, if you want to drop your LinkedIn in the chat or something to connect with the assistants, just feel free to do so. All right. So we're going to start. So welcome, everyone. My name is Lizeth Zarate. I am the Chief Marketing Officer of We Are All Human Foundation, a foundation dedicated to advance equity for all with a particular focus on Hispanics in the United States. Today, it's the 5th out of 6 parts of the capacity building series focused on the different pillars of the Hispanic Promise. For those of you who may not be familiar, the Hispanic Promise is the first of its kind national corporate pledge to prepare, hire, promote, retain, celebrate, and buy from Hispanics in the workplace. It was launched at the World Economic Forum in 2019 and is the result of joint efforts of multiple Hispanic organizations. The Hispanic Promise is a non-legally binding sign of intention, a call to action for business leaders and companies of corporate America to create a more inclusive work environment for Hispanics. To date, more than 300 companies have signed the pledge, and we encourage you to do it in case you haven't, or to share it with others in case you haven't as well. During our 4th session, we focused on how to build a culture of inclusion in the workplace with a particular emphasis on how to retain Hispanic talent by promoting Hispanic leadership and fair treatment of employees. Today, we will explore the lack of visibility of Hispanic contributions and discuss why it's crucial to increase recognition and celebrate Hispanic successes year-round. The discussion will cover a range of topics, including Hispanic Heritage Month, the importance of role models, and examples of internal and external mechanisms to recognize Hispanic achievements. Whether you are an HR professional, a corporate leader, or simply interested in promoting diversity and inclusion in the workplace, this is a panel you won't want to miss. Now, it is my absolute pleasure to introduce to you our stellar panel for today. I'm going to start with Oscar. Oscar Cepeda studied at Merrimack and Boston colleges. He co-founded OMC Group in 2012 and launched Real Cepeda Tequila in 2019 with his father. He is recognized as one of Boston Latinos 30 under 30. He became a certified tequila expert in 2022 and now oversees Real Cepeda's operations across several US states. Welcome, Oscar. We also have Laura Gallardo. Laura is a seasoned media relations specialist who began as a Texas journalist before joining IBM's media team to highlight the company's narrative. As a proud first-generation Mexican-American with an MBA from the University of Texas, she believes in education's power and mentors upcoming Latinas MBAs. Welcome, Laura. We also have Amber Medina. Amber is the VP of Product Strategy with the Hispanic segment at Synchrony, where she focuses on expanding payment and financing solutions for Hispanic consumers. She's an advocate for diversity and inclusion, actively participating in Synchrony's Hispanic Network and co-funding the Latinx Executive Alliance. Amber holds a bachelor's degree in business marketing and information systems from Loyola Marymount University. Welcome, Amber. Last but not least, we have also Susie Collins. Susie is the Senior Director of Equality Strategy at Salesforce. She has led DEI initiatives at Amazon Web Services, Nordstrom, and the Gates Foundation. With a master's from the University of San Francisco, she serves on USF's Women in Leadership Board and has affiliations with Aspen Institute, Hispanics in Philanthropy, and Salesforce Global Seminar. A DEI co-chair in Seattle, Susie hails from Lima, Peru, and resides in LA with her multicultural family. Now, let's get started. So I'm going to start with Susie. Susie, what are some examples of best practices, programs, initiatives, etc., that your company has implemented to celebrate Hispanics all year long, but particularly during Hispanic Heritage Month?
Thank you, Lizeth, for that kind introduction. Hi, everyone. Glad to be here with all of you in community and super proud of the work that we do here at Salesforce year-round in support of our Latinx and Hispanic community. As Lizeth mentioned, I was born and raised in Lima, Peru. So this is a personal cause, but I do oversee all our equality programs in support of underrepresented talent. So in terms of Latinx and Hispanic, we have some really strong partnerships with We're All Human, but also with Latinas in Tech, with ACE, and to ensure that, we are making it a two-way partnership in which, we bring the content and partner with all of you so our employees can leverage and grow as professionals and broaden out their networks within the Latinx and Hispanic community and beyond. We also have an executive recruitment partnership with High Tech. We actually will be at their annual event next week in Orlando with a representation from our executives, and we have some speakers as well. And we also ensure that our employees are aware that they can leverage these memberships, across the year. It's super important that they feel that sense of belonging, not just within the company, but within the community. That is one way in which we support our employees. We also have other ways, such as coming up for Hispanic Heritage Month on October 11th. We are hosting HSI Day, so Hispanic Serving Institutions, highlighting the opportunity to partner with HSI, learn about how can we look at non-traditional pathways to education, and ensuring that our employees and HSI alumni communities know about, the great opportunities here at Salesforce from an employment perspective. So I will share with you, Lisette, for your follow-up, an invitation for everyone in this call and your networks to join this virtual event on October 11th. We're also hosting an event in our Atlanta hub on the future of AI through the Latinx and Hispanic lens. So if you are based in Atlanta on October 12th, we would love to extend that invitation as well. We will have a great panel and some of the most well-known AI experts from the Latino community at this event. We have an activation here in New York City. I'm visiting from LA for a few days with Daisy Aguer Dominguez, author and TED Talk speaker, tomorrow for our employees. So we're always looking to curate experiences that expose, the greatness and excellence of our community across the year. But obviously with Hispanic Heritage Month, we highlight some of these voices. And then we could not do any of this without our equality group, Latino Force. So Latino Force, it's a force of nature. They are really helping us inform our equality programs through that lens, that community. We have a very well resource and structured business resource group model here at Salesforce. It started in 2008. We just went through the evolution from ERG to BRG to really drive that impact and formalize some of our processes and systems. So in partnership with Pierre Higueros, who is the president of Latino Force, and myself, we also support a community of Latinx and Hispanic Director Plus through EVP level folks here at Salesforce, building community, ensuring that they network among one another, and then that help us, increase connection with middle managers. So those are some ways, Lisette, in which we support the community year long. Happy to answer any further questions.
Thank you, Susie, and thank you for the invitation. We will make sure to share it with our audience as well. Amber, I would love to hear your thoughts on what are some examples and best practices of your company.
Yeah, absolutely. And thank you for having me on the panel. At Synchrony, the inclusion of each of our diverse networks really has been part of the fabric of our culture, right? And so from day one, we have encouraged really shining a light on the topics that are most important to our employees. And so each of our diverse networks, whether it's Hispanic Network Plus, Enabled Network Plus, Veterans, we have 8 different networks. We really listen to our memberships. With over 2,000 members in our Hispanic network, we often listen to see what are the burning topics that are most important. Is it mental health? Is it representation? What are the social kind of components that are driving the well-being of our employees? And so throughout the year, we have programming that specifically addresses those topics. And I think what's great is our leadership team has established critical experiences for employees to lead events, lead conversations, develop strategy in how we can incorporate Hispanic efforts throughout the year. And what that does is it also allows us to see the rising Hispanic talent within the organization, because we allow for them to be creative outside of their day-to-day roles, right? And they get to present to leadership, they get to engage with various people in the company to really further our efforts. I think a couple of the other critical things that we do is we really embrace intersectionality. So as we go through every Spotlight Month, if it's, in March when we have Women's History Month, we will partner with our Women's Network Diversity Group to see how can we showcase what Latinas want to talk about during that month, right? During African American Month, when we're highlighting, that segment, we will again partner with them to see how can we highlight Afro-Latinidad. If it's veterans, and celebrating veterans, we will bring veterans from the community forward. So we're actively partnering, always making sure that Hispanics are part of the dialogue, and in return, right, partnering with them to make sure that the other segments of our diverse workforce are also seen and heard during Hispanic Heritage Month. So that intersectionality is really important, because I think it bridges the way we operate today as a community. We are no longer just Hispanic, right? We saw that with the census. And then I think the last part of it is really, all of our networks have a plus at the end of it, and that represents allyship. And so whether it's our networks and rising talent, whether it's our Hispanic strategy and how we engage with the Hispanic consumer, that plus, that allyship is really key to our strategy, because as we know, only 4% of executive leadership today is Hispanic. So without allies advancing our narrative and advancing the initiatives for Hispanic employees or consumers, really depends on that allyship to bring us forward and bring us to the table.
Thank you, Amber. I think they're very valuable to what you mentioned about listening to the members to develop a strategy, and also allyship and intersectionality. In that sense, I would also love to hear your thoughts, Laura. You being part of a company as big as IBM, what are the things that you have been working around?
Yeah, so as we know, we're right in the middle of Hispanic Heritage Month, and at IBM, we have been planning a month-long celebration to elevate and celebrate the many nationalities of our Hispanic and Latino IBMers. So a group of very dedicated volunteers, we've been putting together conscious and educational content, but also fun content where we celebrate our Latinidad. We've had conversations. We have a conversation with a congressman coming up next week. We've had also conversations with professors to talk about our Latinidad. For example, last week I hosted a game of loteria. I could have never imagined that I would do that in my professional career. Dozens of folks showed up. We, in true Hispanic nature, we were heckling each other because the cartas that some people wanted were not coming up. But all of this to celebrate our culture, right? To celebrate who we are as a Hispanic community. But the celebrations are not limited, or the recognitions are not limited to Hispanic Heritage Month. We also make sure to elevate and bring awareness to the contributions of IBMers year-round. We have programming year-round to celebrate them and maintain communication within our Hispanic community year-round. Additionally, IBM has forged relationships with external organizations which help deliver value to Hispanic IBMers. We're proud partners of We're All Human. Every year we make sure to give IBMers the opportunity to attend the various conferences. We also have helped contribute and shape the framework of the Hispanic Promise, which is so important. Also highlight IBMers during the various Latinos of Impact webinars. We also have relationship with HITECH, which is highly instrumental in the development of our technology leaders within IBM, as well as SHIP. A lot of our technical talent, our engineers, are also members of SHIP. So it's important to have these opportunities in the recruitment, but also in the networking of our own community. So Hispanic Heritage Month is that one month where we're loud and proud, but our efforts to elevate and to recognize Hispanic IBMers is year round. And we do that by celebrating it year round, recognizing contributions year round, and, you know, just making sure that we have a North Star that we're working within IBM and putting our efforts to contribute towards that.
Thank you, Laura. I love what you said about having opportunities also in the network, no, for all IBMers. Thank you. Now, I would love to hear you, Oscar. I have a different question for you. Are there specific challenges or barriers that have historically hindered the visibility of Hispanic contributions, and how do you think we can address these challenges?
Of course, thank you for your question, and well, good morning, everybody. Yes, so while looking at the question, and we understood three different things that have, you know, affected or hindered the contributions of our Hispanic community, especially on our community. And I think the limited awareness and the understanding of our Hispanic culture is a big misunderstanding in our community. I think that has impacted in a lot of ways. The beautiful examples that my partner panelists have mentioned are the things that we definitely need to implement, and sadly is not widely implemented or as much as we will want to. So that limited awareness, and then more importantly, the stereotypes, right? The misconceptions of what our Hispanic community is, or where we come from, what we can contribute. Those stereotypes often overshadow the contributions that we can have to our community, that we've been doing, the hard work community that we are, the diversity and the celebration that we bring to it. So those things have heavily affected the way that we celebrate and contribute, and we highlight our Hispanic, as well as the level of expectations. Sometimes, you know, often, unfortunately, Hispanic or Latinos, the level of expectation that, you know, we corporations and any other white predominantly community see us, it's low. So that level of expectation does not empower really our community, and or really bring a bridge where we can actually excel. And with that, if we are able to increase the level of expectations and really empower, highlight, celebrate, well, Hispanic, we know that as our culture, we're very passionate, we're very celebratory, we're very emotional. And when someone feels, especially as a Latino, that has that motivation, that has that drive, and that more importantly, that encouragement behind it, then we know as a culture, it's endless what we can do. But the level of expectation of who we are as a Hispanics in all our community and in the workplace needs to be leveled up by our leadership, spaces where our contributions and our celebrations are within our workplace need to be in place, and programs like the Laura, Susie, and Amber mentioned, it need to be a constant, not only in the Hispanic Heritage Month, but it needs to be throughout the year, to elevate the misconception and stereotype that sadly sometimes you know, it's impacted towards our community. We're much more than people who could understand, and have that passion that we can celebrate and we can show it. But we need that empowerment, right, at all times.
Yeah, of course. It makes sense. It's like it's a pain point for corporations, and also internally for us, no, like to change that narrative of the expectations that are probably in the workplace, and how can we collectively work together towards that. Now, thank you, Oscar, for that. I would love to hear you, Susie. Are there any specific challenges or barriers that you want to share?
Yeah, I will plus one everything that was said in terms of like kind of mitigating those perceptions, as Oscar mentioned. But I mean, a few more things, and I had to review the data myself, because, you know, the data around Latinx and Hispanic representation is changing so fast. I know a few new reports are coming up this week as well, so I'm excited to learn about that. But as I went back to Pew Research Center, which is a great resource, a credible resource to understand the demographic changes, just gather a few data points, you know, around like helping the community understand, and then our allies, that we are not a monolith group, right? And the most recent US Hispanic population reached 62.5 million in 2021 from 50.5 million in 2010. So that's a huge growth. And the number of Latinos who are multiracial has increased also dramatically. Almost 28 million of Latinos identify with one or more races, up from 3 million in 2010. 60% of Hispanics are Mexican, and the rest represent over 20 countries in Latam. So that's just some factual data to help us understand that our representation is so vast, right? 1 in 3 Latinos self-identify as Afro-Latino. So super important that we bring that perspective as well when we talk about both the Black and the Latinx community, that intersectionality. So that's one thing that I feel like I will continue to emphasize, obviously here in the workplace, but across all the spaces where I have a voice. A few other challenges that are personal to me, it's having to overcome the perceptions of not having the ability to lead or be strategic because I have an accent, right? So, having found my accent as my differentiator, right? People usually remember me when I'm in a room because I'm the only one that sounds like me and that speak with my hands, So, and the fact that, I can be thinking strategically across different cultures and different languages. So this one is super important, I think, to highlight in the workplace, because we know that Latinos who speak Spanish and Portuguese are not the only ones who speak a second or a third language. This is how we find commonality with folks from, APAC, or folks from Europe, or folks that speak a different language. So that has been, I think, a great advantage for me, is once I understood the power of how I sound, the power of my voice and my language, it has allowed me to open up doors for other folks who are not Latinos, who might have experienced the same challenge. And the third point that I wanted to make was around, how Latinos are portrayed in media and stereotypical roles, right? So obviously we know that a lot of us, come from humble beginnings, that we're very proud of our backgrounds. A lot of immigrants, parents, grandparents have come here to do service work, housekeeper work, hotel work, farmers work, right? But we also know that Latinos, are doctors, are lawyers, and educators. So a couple of examples that are really recent have allowed me to continue to change my perception and then share the resources with other people who are willing to do the work, is the role of Isis Kin in Love with Prime. That's a show that I think everyone should watch it. It's really powerful, and it really shows the representation of Latinos across the board. It's a beautiful story by a producer and screenwriter. Her name is Gloria Calderon Keller. And then the other role that I think is super relevant is Jessie Garcia in Flaming Hot. Both roles, really help us change the perception of the potential of Latinos across the board. So I really hope that we continue to see representation across the news, across movies, across, the CEOs that we see being highlighted on LinkedIn. We want to see more Latinos. So that's why, going back to storytelling, I think that's a great opportunity for corporations and companies to really put these Latinx and Hispanic leaders, in a position of visibility, and then also highlighting not just the fact that they're Latinos and the barriers and challenges that they face, but really highlighting the business that they're running, right? So the value added that we bring is that we have that cultural understanding, that we perhaps speak another language, or perhaps had to overcome these barriers. But the most important thing is that we have the capabilities for the roles that we have been hired for in our companies. So highlighting Latinos, not just within Hispanic Heritage Month, but across the year.
Thank you, Susie. I loved everything that you said. I think it's also very aligned to what we've been trying to push this Hispanic Heritage Month about, flipping the script, like just reframing the values that we, for example, instead of being hindered by an accent, then just like celebrate the multiculturalism, and all of these nuances of language that might make a difference when owning our own Latinidad. Thank you for this. So now I would love to hear about you, Laura, with a different question. How can we engage allies and advocates in promoting the visibility of the Hispanic contributions and advancing diversity, equity, and inclusion?
Sure. So this is actually ongoing at IBM currently. We are hosting allyship circles, the various BRG communities within IBM. So Hispanic, Black, Native American, we have 7 at IBM. We've been hosting allyship circles, and I had the opportunity to represent the Hispanic community at our circle last week. And we welcome allyships from across IBM to have very candid discussions about our community and how we can work together to embrace and be conscious about being allies to our community. And the conversations that we had, the call was not recorded, so everybody could speak openly. We spoke about a lot of the nuances within our culture that sometimes we might feel a little self-conscious about. So one of the conversations, like speaking to Susie's point about accent, somebody talked about how their accent normally is something that might hold them back from speaking up, but now they realize is their superpower. And our allies were not aware of these challenges that we might experience day to day in the workplace. We also talked about how often, our culture is seen as very humble. We put our heads down and we work. So we're not comfortable with self-promoting, but as we know, in corporate America, you have to self-promote. So, we opened up to, as a community, we opened up to our allies, and allies were open to asking a lot of questions about just understanding us as a culture and how that may reflect in the workplace. And it was a very rewarding conversation to be able to talk about these things that, like I was open about how it's something you may relate if you're a woman. You're often told calladita te ves más bonita. And that's certainly something I grew up with growing up. So I tend to be someone who doesn't speak up right away. I'm more reserved when I speak up. And how does that translate in the workplace? I am seen as maybe someone who holds back or doesn't contribute. So it's something we've had to unlearn. So it was just a very rewarding opportunity to be able to have these conversations in an open and safe environment. And each community had the opportunity to host these same conversations. Another way that the IBM is being conscious about the elevation and representation within various business units is that now leadership is incentives. I cannot say the word. Sorry, but basically, the bonuses are tied to leaders who are able to meet certain diversity goals. So that ensures that there's representation within their respective business units. So it's all a way to bring visibility to the various communities at IBM and bring visibility to people of color within IBM and within each business unit.
Thank you, love it. I also can relate to the calladita te ves más bonita line. So yeah, we need to unlearn those
Yes.
things. Amber, I would love to hear your thoughts about it. How do we engage allies?
Yeah, absolutely. So, similar to Laura, we do a lot of conversations, right? And I think that's the key, is that we do listen to our employees. We have vulnerable conversations. And so I can give you a couple of just real examples, because I know that's what your audience is really wanting, right? Is those tactical, what could we be doing today to move this narrative forward? So one, I think we're very intentional with how we talk about Hispanic. So from a consumer perspective, we do call it a segment, and I think education and awareness is very key to allyship. And so things like, did you know there are nearly the same amount of Hispanics in the US that there are Gen Zers or millennials? And so, companies put forth so much effort to try to captivate those segments. How is the Hispanic consumer segment different? Right. So when we think about business opportunity, when we think about embedding, new Spanish journeys or Hispanic marketing for our clients and partners, right, we bring that narrative forward in terms of very intentional conversations about the segment, why we're investing, how we're investing. I think the other thing is we invite allies to be in the conversation with us. So we have an internal Hispanic council, which is made up of all of the Hispanic executives within Synchrony. But on that council, we also have allies, right? And the reason is, again, sponsorship and advocacy for our Hispanic talent to rise across different functions in the company. We need those allies actively getting to know our talent, helping to advocate for them on hiring slates, helping to bring external talent into the company as well that is Hispanic or other diverse segments. So inviting them to the conversation. And I think transparent, vulnerable communication is also key. Just yesterday, our EVP and CEO of our health and wellness business, Beto Casellas, as well as our board member, Fernando Aguirre, shared very transparently and vulnerably on the stage in front of all of our company about their hurdles, their struggles, similar to what Oscar and Susie shared, right? Their accents, some of these embedded cultural traits like calladita, calladita más bonita, things that we have to unlearn, right? And those vulnerable conversations, when a company sees two of our highest ranked executives being open and honest about their journey and how they've had to overcome, I think is really key to building connection with allyship. We also take that conversation further and discuss how can some of these things be hindering our talent during interview processes? How can we educate hiring managers to consider, somebody who may take a second to think about because they may be thinking in a different language. And oh, by the way, Spanish has less words than the English language. So sometimes we need more words to actually say what we need to say in English, right? Because sometimes we're translating in our head. So having these open conversations, inviting people to sit and learn and really be a part of the strategy, I think is really key to making sure that there's skin in the game for our allies, above and beyond, obviously, incentivizing, like Laura mentioned.
I agree with everything you said, Amber. Thank you so much. I want to go back a bit with you, Laura. Can you share a personal experience or success story related to recognizing Hispanic achievements and the positive impact it has had on organizations?
Yeah, so as part of a lot of the tactics that we do at IBM is recognizing IBMers year-round through a variety of ways. So we have blog posts. We launched a Somos IBM video series where we bring just relatable stories about Hispanic IBMers to life. And we've made a conscious decision to show IBMers from all walks of life: interns, recent hires, mid-career executives. So we're representing everyone. And they just share their story to IBM, relatable content. We also highlight them in our newsletter and hold various webinars throughout the year. So we're continuously thinking of opportunities. How can we elevate and share the stories of our Hispanic IBMers? We really try to consciously do these things. Every year, IBM, as many companies do, run a yearly engagement survey. And what we have found is that, at least for our community, I'm looking at the data because I want to get it right. Our employees who are engaged within our community and our BRGs are 3% higher in their engagement than the rest of the IBM population. And for the people who are actively involved in leading our BRG, so we have, in addition to the large community, we have local BRGs throughout the US. So like Austin, San Jose Valley are kind of some of our larger ones, a few in New York. Those community members are polling 5 points higher than the average. When you look at the large scale of responses that IBM receives, that's quite a big change. So it goes to show that being part of a community, being felt seen, being recognized ultimately helps with your overall well-being and feeling content in your role. I can attest to that. Like every year in those engagement surveys, I'm like, high, I check very high. And I'm also very much involved in the BRG and the Familia at IBM. And it ultimately helps all of us feel a sense of community, be able to feel like we belong, we are seen. So we're seeing the positive impacts of a lot of the efforts that we're seeing by the engagement and overall engagement of our community members at IBM.
Thank you, Laura. And just to stay with you for our last question, how can we ensure that the recognition of Hispanic contributions is not limited to just 1 month, but it becomes like a sustained and integral part of our workforce and culture? You've been speaking about it, so I'm not sure if you want to elaborate a bit more.
Yeah, so, first of all, there's accountability. We meet every month with our executive committee and we talk about goals and our progress towards these goals. And then as a larger kind of volunteer group, we meet within squads and think of very tactical ways of how we can continue bringing awareness and keeping the community engaged. So for example, I'm in the communications committee, so we meet twice a month and think of ways that we can bring stories to life and continue recognizing IBMers. At IBM, we have an internal goal to reach representation, his community representation for 9%. We're working towards that. So we think of bringing stories, bringing content that helps support that. Additionally, we host monthly, what we call Fiesta Fridays. So once a month, we highlight a country. IBMers from that nationality talk to us about their beautiful culture, the cuisine, customs, and we just get to learn about our various nationalities and backgrounds, which, as we've said, we're not a monolith, right? There's so much richness and even diversity within our community. We really listen to feedback from our Brazilian colleagues. We received feedback that we perhaps were not, as a community, we were not as inclusive towards our Brazilian colleagues, under the impression that we only welcome people with Spanish-speaking backgrounds, and that is far from the truth, right? So we made the conscious decision to be inclusive even within our community, and we rebranded ourselves to Familia at IBM. As we know, Familia is kind of the center of our culture, Hispanic and Latina culture. Familia is a word that translates to Spanish and Portuguese. So we formed a Brazilian coalition, which helps ensure that engagement within our Brazilian community remains and aligned to the Familia at IBM. We've also, and it's all about even making small changes. So in a lot of our communication, we tend to sprinkle words in Spanish here and there. Well, we have to be conscious of our Brazilian colleagues. So now we sprinkle words in Spanish and Portuguese. So if we're going to say bienvenidos, we make sure to find the appropriate translation in Portuguese. So it's all very small and nuanced things, but if we really want to be inclusive and recognize all our community year-round, we have to continue keeping even these small tactics in mind. Additionally, we maintain communication. I'm in charge of the newsletter. I make sure that newsletter goes out every month to ensure that the entire community is aware of the latest news impacting us. I mentioned previous, we do our Somos IBM video series that highlights IBMers from all walks of life, talking about their journey to IBM. So, it's a lot of you have to be dedicated not only to the strategy, but the very tactical things that you need to carry out day in, day out, week in, week out. Hold yourself accountable, report to the committee. These are the changes we are seeing. This is what we're doing. This is how things are performing. Because if we want to see change, we have to track and we have to track all these things, right? We have to hold ourselves accountable. And we've been doing that year round, just ensuring that we have a mission, we have a strategy, and then as squads, we are executing on that. And that really just helps maintaining Hispanic Heritage Month becoming Hispanic Heritage Year at IBM, just making sure that we continue elevating, recognizing, celebrating us.
Thank you, Laura. Thank you for that. Small tactics about inclusion are important, and it's good that you mentioned that. Hey, Oscar, I would love to hear your thoughts on this, about how can we ensure that this is not only Hispanic Heritage Month, but it's just Hispanic Heritage Year.
Of course, and I do think it's year, and I want to piggyback a lot of what Laura said, and I think it involves a lot in what she mentioned about having a presence, right? Making sure that you matter, making sure that you belong. Think having a workplace that has an open place of having a conversation of how you feel, especially with the example that you mentioned about the Brazilians, and this type of places and areas where you're able to actually excel and feel comfortable that you belong. I think those are important, having a presence, and that translates not only in the workplace but going below, on the educational system, right? Going to school, making sure that you as a kid you feel comfortable, that you're saying some sparkling words in Spanish somewhere here, that you feel comfortable in calling yourself Jorge and not George, that you feel comfortable saying that you're Juan and you're not John, that you're really, really proud coming from home that you are a Latino, right? I am proud, estoy orgulloso de ser mexicano, and that's how you will want to feel in a workplace. So having this sense of accountability, this open communication, having a presence where you are able to understand and celebrate your culture, because the deeper side of things is how comfortable can we get into following the next generation. First generation immigrants, they already have the culture with themselves, they're proud of who they are, but then how does that translate to the second generation in terms of language, and then ultimately third, fourth generation, maybe they don't already have the language, and it does become George and it does become John, and they're not comfortable with having that, and they're not comfortable because these systems are not in place to celebrate and to make sure that it's not a month, it's a year, and the contributions and Latinidad and the fiesta tacos, and that happens every day, and the arepas and the pupusas, all of those things that really matter and that really celebrate us, those come from a culture that is vast, that is diverse, that is celebratory. Mariachi, you can hear it all year round. You don't have to wait until September to October. And those things are important to capture, not only in the workplace, but when you start at home, to make sure that you really feel proud of who you are. Because I think that's deeper meaning. How do we really feel proud of who we are as Latinos? Because we should. Let's not leave it to the government, to the educational systems to that. No, let's bring that from home. Let's make sure that our values as Latinos and our language matters, that our kids have that in their minds. So when they comes to the workplace, we're not leaving it to the workplace to make the initiatives. We are, we have our superpowers, just as Susie said, our accents, and sometimes we have the ability to make that change. And not every leader, unfortunately, has that mindset. But if the worker, if the one that is coming with these values is voicing that, which is very hard, but voicing that because it really proud of being that Latino, Hispano, then that change is going to happen in the leadership aspects. Obviously, hopefully, that leadership also has spaces for our people. But ultimately, let's not leave it with the government or the educational system. It's on us as well, as far as being from home, because we should be proud of being Hispanic and Latino. I am proud, absolutely, of being it.
Hey, Lisette, can I add in one thing I haven't heard us touch that I think is really important? For us, one of the key things for us has been, yes, we love to celebrate, similar to what everybody's talked about, but it's more than just the food. It's more than just the music, right? And one of the ways that I feel we really show our Hispanic employees and just our diverse employees really that they're celebrated is even in our benefits. So when we think about our EAP benefits, we made a concerted effort to make sure that we had representation from therapists and mental health experts that came from the communities, right? That could help have the conversations. Our social environment's been tough the last few years. And so we made a concerted effort to make sure that employees felt like they belonged and that they had the resources that they needed from their own community to have these conversations. When COVID happened, we really found doctors, again, from each community that could talk to the specific community concerns about the social environment and the healthcare environment. So I think that's one area where a lot of businesses don't think about is beyond the celebrations, how do you really celebrate your employees and make sure that they feel like what Oscar said, that they belong, that they're there and that you care about them and that you're listening to them in more ways than just the mainstream celebrations. And then the other thing that we do is we welcome the hard discussions. And I think that's the hardest part for some companies to get behind. We talk about immigration. We talk about, prejudice. We talk about biases. And I think that is really showing employees, and why our Greater Places to Work scores are so high is because that belonging, that we care, that we listen, that we make people feel seen and heard is really key. So I just wanted to share that because I haven't heard us really go to kind of the more benefits or outside of celebration. Those are other ways that companies can make sure that employees feel really good about where they work.
Of course, and that also it goes right in the middle of our day-to-day life, so it's important also. I love what you said about having these hard discussions at the end. These are a reflection of pain points and passion points that need to be addressed. So that's in the road of making a meaningful celebration, as well. Thank you all for joining us today in this panel. I think it has been a very fruitful conversation about the importance of this fifth pillar of Celebrate. It's all about some of the takeaways that I have right now, just to share with the audience. We need to have meaningful celebrations, not just fiesta and tacos, but like learning the data, as Susie mentioned in some of her interventions, and create the conditions to bring our best selves to work, and how does leaders engage with that, so that Hispanics can feel seen, heard, and valued in the workplace. Knowing the data, owning our power, increasing our presence in every level. So thank you so much for being here today. Thank you so much for the audience to also connecting, and see you at the next one. Bye.